My name is Pai Chu. This is the start of a series of videos on YouTube that I called the 5 minute window. Give me 5 minutes of your life, and I will share with you something about life, God, and the Bible. And to start off this 5 minute window series, I'm going to use the book of Daniel that is found in the Old Testament of the Bible. The Bible consists of two parts, the Old Testament and the New Testament. You will find the book of Daniel about three-quarters way in through the Old Testament, the first part of the Bible. Daniel gives the story of a man who, in about 605 BC, is forced by an invading army from Babylon to go to the city of Babylon. And there, far away from his home, God gives Daniel the ability to interpret the dreams and visions that he sends to the kings. And in the final 6 chapters of the book of Daniel, we will find visions that God gives to Daniel to tell him about the future, the kingdoms of this world, and the final events of humanity. My approach in this series on Daniel is to introduce to what I call spirituality. Spirituality. God, the Holy Spirit, is always working in our hearts and in our lives. So, therefore, when I refer to spirituality, I'm referring to how God, the Holy Spirit, works in our hearts and in our lives. The main verse to define spirituality in the book of Daniel is found in Daniel chapter 5, verse 14. And here, a human hand appears out of nowhere and puts some writing on the wall as King Belshazzar is wining and dining with his people in the hall. He is desperate, King Belshazzar. So his queen tells him about Daniel, this Jewish man who is able to interpret dreams, as he interpreted dreams for his father Nebuchadnezzar. And so therefore, Belshazzar says this to Daniel before Daniel gives him the interpretation of that writing on the wall. And this is what King Belshazzar says about Daniel. I have heard that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that you have insight, intelligence, and outstanding wisdom. If ever there was a spirituality that I would like in my life, it is the spirituality of Daniel. Because here we have a non-Jewish king who is desperate and looks to Daniel for the interpretation of the writing on the wall. And he says that the spirit of the gods is present in Daniel, and this is a reference to God the Holy Spirit who is working in Daniel's heart and Daniel's mind. I'd like to end with two ideas of spirituality that will be very evident as we go through the book of Daniel. The first point I want to say is this. God is always doing something in our lives and saying something to us. And this is what I call revelation. God saying something to us or doing something in our lives. And when God gives his revelation to us, we respond. And this is what I call response. And so therefore, the spirituality of life is a rhythm between revelation from God on the one hand, and on the other hand, our response to God in our lives and in our hearts. And if you look through the book of Daniel, you will find that Daniel is praying most of the time. Firstly, in Daniel chapter 2, Daniel and his three friends pray to God so that God will give him an interpretation of King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Secondly, in Daniel chapter 6, Daniel prays to God and gives thanks to him 3 times a day before he's put into the lion's den. And finally, in Daniel chapter 9, Daniel prays for Israel and confesses the sins of Israel so that God will have mercy on Israel. Therefore, in the days ahead, as we read through Daniel, I'm going to ask you to do two things. Firstly, look out for God. Look out for his revelation in your life. Secondly, pray to God. Respond to him as he reveals himself to you. May God reveal himself to you as you read through the book of Daniel in the days ahead.